Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all walks in between. And today, we're fortunate to be joined by Louisa Henry, who's going to talk to us about you don't need a new job to change the world. Uh, hey, that's very exciting and good news to me and to I'm sure a lot of listeners out there today. Louisa is a leadership and product coach who helps startup leaders and mission-driven founders move from burnout to clarity and grounded influence. So, Louisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Greg. Really a pleasure to be here.
So before we get into it, we're going to talk about, you're going to offer us some practical tools for aligning purpose with action, rallying others, and creating impact from the inside out. Very eager to jump into all this and unpack it. But first, let's take a step back. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your personal journey and what led you to executive coaching and your podcast?
Sure. Um, well, I live in San Francisco now. I was originally born in Peru. My dad's Peruvian, mom's American. I learned Spanish as my first language and moved to Arizona. And I've kind of had this mix of both my parents in me. My dad is an entrepreneur. He's a physician. He kind of like went to medical school, started his own practice, and has been running his small business ever since. And my mom was a geology major, a big planet animal lover, really cared about what humans are doing to this planet. So I feel like I grew up really kind of aware of what was going on.
Mm,
Stopped eating meat when I was 15, and after consuming some like PETA videos and content, and just thought I don't need to contribute to that.
yeah.
And but really I kind of took after my dad's side early in my career. I you know graduated high school and then just went straight into college, had a bunch of different majors. Elementary school teacher, computer science, psychiatry, and then eventually landed on marketing and business. And and then I think what happened is I kind of got sucked into the work machine. I
Sure.
worked at JP Morgan for like some 9 years or something early in my career, and worked all over the place there in their technology organization, in corporate communications, and then eventually when I moved to San Francisco, worked in product management, working on the Chase mobile redesign of their massive mobile phone app. And I really fell in love with product management, I think, because it it kind of gets at like consumer or just human behavior. How do people think? How do they interact with things? How are they influenced by color, or even just like, user interface layouts, or um actually early when I was in high school, I wanted to be somebody who made car commercials
Get out of here.
because, yeah, I thought it was, like, really cool that something that's only 30 seconds long can have such a different kind of, like, emotional impact on the viewer, right? It's just, like, flashes on. Some car commercials, you're like, "Yeah, we're, like, climbing a mountain. This is so exciting." And other ones, it's, like, luxury and slow and chill, and it was I never went that route, but I
Yeah.
think something about that always stuck with me, and just thinking, "Okay, like, how do people think about the world, and how do we navigate our way through it?" And yeah, so that led me to San Francisco and more tech jobs and more product leadership roles. I've worked at like really high growth health tech startups like Clover Health. I worked at Airtable, building out their first customer support organization. And then over to Gusto, where I led their mid market efforts, helping them kind of grow their business to larger businesses. And I think maybe like and I was all happy and everything was fine, and I think
Mhm.
something in the COVID time kinda hit me. I think I reawoke to our climate crisis. I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but I kinda thought, I don't know, like, hey, we had about, Obama, and like, he added a lot of things. Biden's doing stuff. This is great. we got it handled. I'm going to just focus on my like tech world. And then in COVID, I was like, no, 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 this is bad. Like the world, like, California is on fire. Um, there's all sorts of stuff happening all over the world. Hawaii, I was digging into some of the problems they were having. I'm like, wow, if Hawaii is having problems, like one of this rich, beautiful place in the planet, what's going on in the not so well off places? And started digging in there and was just horrified to see how many people are just suffering, not to mention animals, plants, and everything else, and how we're kind of throwing off the whole ecosystem of our planet. And so that's when I started saying, okay, I really need to find a job in climate, and that was my goal at the time. But it was the middle of COVID, and not a lot of job opportunities there. So I said, okay, well, I'll keep going at my job. I'll look on the side. I think it was like 3.5 years later, I was doing annual planning at work, and I realized that I hadn't been looking on the side, and my year ahead at work was not as inspiring as it had been in previous years. And I was fortunate enough that I had a little bit of runway that I could take a risk. So I decided to leave my job and kind of put my money where my mouth is and go find my place in climate. And so that started with me taking Terra.do. They have a learning for action course where they really go into like the science behind the problem, how big of a problem it is, and then they talk about the solution space, which is pretty massive. There's a lot of areas within climate. I thought climate was like picking an industry this big. It's huge. And yeah, and then I did find a few jobs, but they were in areas that like didn't really, I don't know, didn't really fill me up quite as much. Specifically, it was carbon credit markets and ESG reporting. And I think because of my background in software and tech, that seemed to be the closest match because it's obviously a hiring manager's market right now. So they can hire very specific, very specific candidates for that have done exactly what they're looking for. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity. I panicked. I said, "Okay, well, I'll go get a job in healthcare because I have a background there and that's important too." And I got an offer. I took my family, my kids, husband, on a last vacation before I started my job. And on that vacation, I got a call in the middle of the night that my mom had unexpectedly passed away.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Thank you. It was incredibly like I'd never had anyone close to me die. And she had been such, a huge inspiration for me in my whole life. And at that point, I think a couple things really clicked for me. One, that life is incredibly short and we could be gone at any moment.
Right.
And, what are we going to do with that time that we're here? And, and two, that, this job that I was about to take was not going to be the right fit for me. I was taking it for the wrong reasons. And so I pulled out of it and I kind of floated for a while. And and then I had decided to bring forward a future goal I had. Throughout my career, I've had 3 incredible coaches, at different jobs, and each one of them really helped me at a time where I was feeling, like, uncertain, like, my confidence was low, or I was just in a job that I'd never done before, or it was just a lot of pressure and stress, and they all helped bring a different perspective and a sense of like of helping me connect with my own self-worth, I think more than anything. And very influential and powerful. And then I was reflecting back on all the jobs I had had, and that part of my job, being a coach to my team or my peers around me, was always the thing that I loved the most, more than any, I don't know, product strategy or road mapping or, whatever it might be. That was the thing that I kept coming back to. So I thought I would be a coach when I retired one day. And and then I said, well, maybe I should look into that now since I don't really have anything else lined up. And I started looking into some schools around coaching and picked one that I thought is just going to help me figure out how to grieve my mom, how to figure out what I want to do with my life. And then if I never coach anybody, so be it. I think this is going to be a good use of time for me. And it absolutely was like the most transformative year of my life. I I think the main thing that it did for me was help me get out of my head. I had been, I think, very conditioned for decades to just be thinking about things from like a like a logic and structure and reasoning and plans and next to do and check things off and just like make progress and start to reconnect with my like emotional side and my body. I think I had been completely neglecting those, and it's really turned everything around, and that's yeah, I know I've been talking for a bit now, but, eventually I binge watched a masterclass on Jane Goodall. I saw an ad for her on somewhere, and my mom had loved Jane Goodall, and I never paid her any attention, and I was like, "Oh,
Uh,
she did a masterclass, cool, let's go check it out." Binged it, saw her speak in San Francisco for her 90th birthday tour, was so
wow.
inspired. She brings forth this, like, way of looking at the world with hope and connecting from the heart and love, and it's incredibly powerful, and it resonated with me so much. I have, like, a notebook, I took all these notes, and in there I wrote, "Hey, what if I talk to the people who are, there's a saying in the climate community called any job can be a climate job. But I had talked to so many job hunters who were just frustrated, who were saying, "No, that's a fine saying, but like I need to get a job in climate because otherwise I'm not going to be able to make a difference." And I said, "Well, what if I find the people who are making the difference and interview them and see how they did it and try to share it with other people and perhaps put little ripples out there that might help, influence a little bit of change in these different industries. And who knows, maybe someday start a grassroots movement because I very, very much believe that you don't need a new job to change the world. You can absolutely do it from whatever job you're in. And I'm open to that challenge if anybody wants to throw a job at me. I'm happy to brainstorm and figure out a way to make it a climate job.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that and really sharing a lot of personal details there in your journey, which I think is so important. Just for people to understand not only your work qualifications, but your life experience and how important that is in what you're bringing to the table and what you have to offer in terms of your coaching. And I want to talk a little bit more in just a minute about how what kind of clients you're working with and the kind of coaching you're doing because we've had a lot of executive coaches on here on the show and a lot of them are talking primarily and not so much about tactics but how to help people become better people and
Yeah.
realize who they really want to be. But let's circle back to the every job can be a climate job. Do you want to expand on that a little bit and tell us what you mean by that?
Sure. Well, when I was on my hunt for a climate job, I was looking for, companies that you would filter down by, like, climate or climate tech or sustainability, and I was like, "That's a climate
Right.
job." And then when I started looking at, what are the biggest sources of pollution and waste and everything, and, like, it's not obviously these climate companies. These climate companies are trying to address that by building tools, technology, process, whatever it might be. But it's these other players out there. And I mean, pretty much anything, industrial, manufacturing, hospital systems. I'm interviewing a bunch of people right now from hospitals. And within those, if we don't have people that are working in those companies that are thinking about the impact they're having, like if they pull up they start a new process or buy a new product or, you know, bring in a new vendor or supplier and we don't think about it about, not only like how is this impacting our customers and bottom line, which everybody's very well trained to do, but how is it impacting the planet? If we don't think about that, then we're all pretty much doomed. Like I would argue that people in non-climate jobs actually have a greater potential for impact. than the people in the climate jobs, because the climate companies are kind of band-aids to try to fix this kind of mess we've created for ourselves. And so, I was even talking to people in oil and gas companies. I've talked to 2 people in different oil and gas companies who are very much aligned with how I think, and,
Sure.
they're driving the initiatives internally to try to move to clean energy and understand the incentives at play and see, like, how can they align what's best for the planet to also be aligned to, the shareholders and the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about our energy infrastructure that is really pumping out it's the engine behind how we live, how we grow. It's been built over decades,
Yeah.
and I've been saying a lot that the industrial revolution got us into this, and the industrial revolution is going to have to get us out of it. And I
Mm,
think what you're talking about is finding these jobs that are part of this whole industrial machine, and can we gradually, slowly turn the plane,
yeah.
course of the plane, and get everybody head in the right direction. I think that's really admirable. Is it tough to find these folks? I mean, like, how are you finding these people in these occupations?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a simple LinkedIn search because,
Yeah.
they don't have climate in their title. But I find it because people reach out to me and they say, "You should talk to my friend over here or this person that I saw." And, I have a pretty good backlog of guests. I'm always looking for more if anybody knows. But you said something there, which was like, we gotta find these jobs that can make the impact. I'd argue that any job can make the impact. For example, I have my podcast right now has I'm dropping a series of interviews that I've done with people in and around Boston Children's Hospital. The first one is with Chuck Blanchett, who works in the labs department. So he's kind of like the IT guy for research labs. So if your freezer's out, you come to him, or whatever machines you need to do. And he just started noticing that, like, freezers were frosted over in kind of a jar and all this, air was coming out, or the fume hoods were sucking up air when they shouldn't, or they'd have these ghost rockers over the weekend that were just shaking nothing. And so he started thinking, like, okay, how can we just change process or add little stickers on what items you can turn off over the weekend or not, and just little things like that. And then I talked to Julian Ferreira, who is the operating room flow manager. And his job is between every surgery, come in, clean up everything, him and his team, get it ready for the next surgery. But in that time, they started seeing, like, there were all these Huck towels that were clean that were going in the trash because even though they're clean, but they're in a surgical room, they're not going to reuse them for another surgery. But janitorial's like, hey, we could use them to mop the floors. And he's like, great. So now, you're diverting something from going to the landfill by giving it to another team. And then another person who works for Teddy Salgado works for the Six Sigma team internally at Boston Children's. And so they're always thinking about, how do we fix process and make things more efficient? Well, a lot of that just starts with identifying the waste. So talk to the
Mhm.
people up and downstream from whatever process you're looking at, see where there's waste and try to eliminate it. And that's probably going to end up being better for the planet too. Yeah, I could keep going, but
Yeah, right. I mean, I think we need to applaud the dads out there who are always checking the thermostat and don't want anybody else to turn it up. I mean, those are the unsung heroes of the climate movement. But no, I
totally.
just joking around there a little bit. But no, your point is well taken. That every job, climate touches everybody, and
Yeah.
we all can have an influence. Um, you've got a couple points here, and I think that you had a point about in the show description. Real transformation starts with individuals who choose to lead from where they are, no matter their title. That can be a little challenging, if you're trying to do something maybe big or have an impact in your company. Um, Maybe give us some tips, like you said you're
Yeah.
gonna share with us how to identify small leverage points that can create outside change. Can you
Yep.
give us some tips on that?
Sure. I think people have a lot more influence and power at work than they realize. And I think that I'm maybe a little bit more attuned to this than others because I've been in that product management role for so long, where you're not like, you don't have a ton of direct reports, but you have a lot of influence. You're changing the company strategy and direction, and you're doing that by collecting data about, where does leadership want to take the company? Okay, cool. I know the rough direction. What are customers saying about our product? How's our product functioning? How are they using it? And how do we kind of connect all those dots? And how do we drive revenue? It's kind of the same thing in climate. You're just trying to see, like, where is the opportunity. So if you want to reduce waste, I think that's a really, really good, easy way to start, is just think about where in your company is there waste? Is there wasted AI is a big thing right now. A lot of people are using AI to just kind of for everything. Like, hey, let's build a new team logo, whatever.
Right.
Let's do 1,000 iterations of it. Being more judicious about how you're spending that energy power. You don't have to cut it out completely, but just be thoughtful about how you're using it. Same way you wouldn't leave the water running when you go into the next room or run outside to go do an errand. You're going to turn it off. So, like, how do you spot that? So I would suggest starting with whatever your role is and seeing, like, what do you touch? What do you influence? What is processes you're involved in? Where are you working with different vendors and suppliers? And what's getting thrown out? What's getting consumed? What's getting you know used excessively for no reason? And then just see what you can change. Just most people don't. What I've seen is, like, most of the time, if you're not making a big resource ask, or you're not asking for money to fund some giant thing, you can just make the shift. Like, everybody's like, "Oh, cool, it's more efficient. We're saving money or we're saving
Right.
time, no problem," even if they're not aligned on the climate side. So really tying it to, what does the business care about?
I like that. I know that in the manufacturing space, they're always trying to talk about how to reduce scrap, how to be more efficient. So, absolutely, your point's well taken. Talk to me a little bit about your coaching and the type of people that you are coaching and how you're helping them.
Yeah, so my coaching is kind of a mix. So I have some people from tech, who are usually founders or product leaders, who I coach on, how to build and scale their organizations. Growth stage is my sweet spot. So, like, you've kind of like got 0 to 1, and now you're trying to go one to a million. And then I coach people who are in the climate space. So, people in climate jobs or climate founders, just trying to support that community a little bit. And then I coach a lot of people who are kind of in this, I don't know what's next for me, but I know it's not the thing I was just doing. And it's this scary kind of like in between moment. I really love working with folks in this moment. I've been there myself, and I know, how terrifying and paralyzing it can be, but it can also, reflecting back, it's the moment where you end up seeing the biggest shifts, and you end up really reconnecting with who you are, and what makes you so great. And I think each person on this planet is incredibly, like, much greater and just more amazing than they are aware of. And so I love working with people to help them kind of tap into that, and see how their life evolves.
Let's talk a little bit about your own personal journey in respect to that, where you were mentioning being adrift, and you were in that space where you really quite weren't quite sure where you wanted to go. What would you say to somebody who's in that space right now and isn't quite sure what their next move is?
I think the biggest tip that I got along the way, and that I would recommend, is to really, give yourself time to explore. A lot of times people just end up filling their calendar with, like, networking calls and job interviews and job postings, and they're just trying to be really productive. If you don't have any space to kind of sit and reflect, ideally outdoors. I love spending as much time outside as you can. Nature can be a really great source of inspiration.
Yeah.
But give yourself that space, and then jot down just, like, the things um, that, like, call your attention. That's gonna be different for everybody, like, there's and they might not have any meaning, and it might not have any meaning for a long time. But after a while, you end up collecting. It's kinda like collecting, dots. Rick Rubin mentioned this in a book that I read, where he says, "Collect all these dots that you see," and it's like, and you never know what's gonna come of it, but you end up collecting these dots, and at the end, you end up with some sort of picture, and you're like, "Oh, this makes a lot of sense." Um, like for
So
me, I didn't know, like I'm starting to go more and do more on YouTube, and which is absolutely insane. When I was in corporate, I don't think I'd ever imagine ever having a YouTube channel. And, but I love it, I really do. And then I started looking back at my phone and I was remembering like a decade ago, I used to make these videos for my family and my friends and like all this stuff and like edit and compile, and I completely forgot about it. And I was like, "Oh yeah." So it's like, what is the thread that's just like, and where is that going?
okay. I wanted to what you were saying about the different points and writing them down. I just wanted to share that. A couple weeks ago, my son, I think he was either house sitting or dog sitting, and he was in a house for a weekend. He had to be there, and he picked a night where he just sat down and he journaled for like 3 or 4 hours, and he just
Mm.
thought about himself and what he liked to do, and it was incredible. He just like wrote everything down. Then he actually took it and he dumped it into Chat GPT, and he said, "Give me a what are some occupations that kind of fit this?"
Oh, cool.
And man, did it ever give him some really accurate things on what he could potentially do. So
Oh, I love that.
I'm just sharing that because that just came to mind.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely that's great. And really good for him that he spent that time journaling and didn't get the pull of the phone to start, scrolling, which I think is kind of the more comfortable place that more people go.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me a little bit. I want to get back to the coaching one more time. And do you find yourself, with some of these folks who maybe aren't in focus on climate, maybe they're just in tech? Are you how do you handle that with your
Mhm.
mission? Are you bringing up climate as part of it, or are you just kind of encouraging it quietly, or how does that
That's a
all
good
work?
question.
Yeah.
It really depends on the client, and I think, yeah, I encourage you to do the same at your job, right? It depends on what your leadership is. If they're receptive and they care about that, great, bring it up and you can brainstorm together. If it's more of like, "No, no, no, and most of the time, the founders, that I'm working with are, growth stage, they have a lot of pressure from their board and their employees and, like, their, bank accounts running out, and so they're not looking for, like, another goal to hit. So instead, you just kind of bake it in, and you bake it in through those efficiency areas. So like, hey, you're wasting money over here with how you're deploying. You have an opportunity to buy less inventory if you thought about it a little bit different way, and that's going to keep your costs down and allow you to grow more and attain your customers. So it's kind of situational, I would say.
I remember one time I there was a study done, and they had a pessimist and two futurists, and one of the futurists said things are going downhill. We're in for a horrible, rude awakening, and things are, we're on a downward trajectory.
Yep.
The other one was very optimistic, brought up all these things, these positive things, these positive growth points. And they found out they went back and they looked at the two, and after a number of years, which one was right? And
Mm.
it was the positive futurist.
Mm.
And the reason why they said is because we have a capacity for change. And when confronted with these problems, we have that capacity for change.
Yeah.
I am very appreciative of the work you're doing, Louisa, to kind of inspire that capacity for change and to turn it into action. What are some things, some practical things that people can do to move from that, maybe that negative mindset, to that positive framework where they're moving forward and moving from like good intention to, say, as you say, to meaningful results?
Mm. Mhm. Surround yourself by the hopeful pieces. Change your feeds, right? Don't keep scrolling the doom and gloom. It's gonna continue to feed it to you for as long as you're consuming it. But if you find the people who are making the changes and and what the good news is out there in the world. It's going to lift you up. It's going to give you better ideas, and you're going to be able to make more impact in the world.
Change your algorithm and you'll change your world. I love it. That's great.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So, okay, we're at the top of the hour, Louisa. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, wants to be on your podcast, wants to talk to you about coaching, how do
Yeah.
they do it?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, of course, but also you can email me, Louisa at Kidoki, KIDOKI.com, and you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, dumb guy here. What does Kadoki mean?
Kidoki was a domain name I registered probably like 18, 20 years ago because I ran a digital camera online shop as like an entrepreneur stint I had a long time ago. And I just kept the domain. It means nothing.
Oh, that's excellent. I love it. You just had the domain. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
it's a fun word.
Okay, it is. It's easy and it's memorable. So, all right, Louisa, thank you so much for joining
Thanks,
us.
Greg.
Sure. And thanks everybody for watching another episode of Thought Leaders Live.